Story 1. The Comforter. My boyfriend's ex drowned me. This happened about a week ago, but I think the proper place to start the story would be a few years back. Before I was even born, my father befriended one of our neighbors, and the two of them got so close that we usually spent holidays at each other's houses. Later, the guy had a son who grows up to be really tall, dark-haired, chocolate-eyed, and a great singer. While my dad then had me, the most embarrassingly awkward girl weeb at school. We were close when we were children, me and the guy, but as we grew older, he became him and I became me. So we basically stopped talking because we had nothing to talk about. Instead, he has the most popular girl at school to talk to. She isn't that pretty, honestly, but her father is rich, working with wine. Most of the time, when there are events around town or school, we drink some of his stuff. A lot of things happened, and I don't know if this will be in chronological order, but basically, I think it started at gym class. Michael was doing push-ups, and I said something which made him laugh so hard he failed to finish his set. We spent most of the gym class talking then, laughing about what I said. But then, when I was at the changing rooms, his girlfriend came to me and told me to never speak to her boyfriend again. I only said one thing, and he found it funny enough to come speak to me the whole time. I wasn't trying to make him talk to me. But when I said this, the girl strangled me and slammed me against the wall, and her friends laughed. She told me that if I did it again, she'd kill me. And for some reason, I thought she was telling the truth. But then something strange happened. I was laying in bed trying to watch JoJo's when my mother called me from downstairs, saying I had a visitor. I never had visitors. The door opened and in walked him. He hadn't visited me in years now. I asked him to sit and went to wash my face and brush my teeth and try not to look like the complete mess I was. But I'm sure he wouldn't have noticed, since he was behaving so strange. We watched a couple of episodes, and he was speaking. He was speaking a lot, actually. A lot more than he normally did. He then said that his parents had wanted him to marry me. Honestly, I know that's what my mother had wanted too. And then he kissed me. Only when he was gone did I realize how much trouble I'd be in with his girlfriend. I was trying to decide what had gotten into him. When I got to the dining table that night, my mother was crying. A tragedy had struck. Turns out my father's friend, he passed away due to COVID some time ago. My father didn't cry, but he also didn't laugh or speak to anyone for days. And my mother cried. Honestly, I couldn't stop crying too when I saw his wife crying. But the person who was closest to him more than any other was his son. That's why he'd been in my room. We grew closer over the next couple of days, but we never kissed again. I just knew he wanted someone to be there for him, and in truth, he didn't really have anyone else. Everyone around him is shallow, and they don't know the true him, his family, his story, his life. Nothing. They just know what they see. But I made sure that I wasn't growing close to him in a romantic way, and his girlfriend didn't do anything until we went to camp. When we were at camp, I think he and I sat together on the bus. When we arrived, we ate together most of the time, and finally, when we played games, he asked me to join his team. His girlfriend said he promised he'd join her, and he said that she was annoying. And this was in front of everyone. Later, I went to the lake to take a swim. Then someone pushed me into the water and held my head down. I turned and looked up, seeing the furious face of the girl. She told me her father has murdered people and that no one will know that she has killed me. In all of my life, I have never fought that hard. I fought so hard, and yet still she was so strong. I started to see black spots, and then everything just went completely black, and my body was numb. It felt like being very sleepy, and so I slept. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. I'd stayed awake for a while with the nurses, and they told me I'd fallen asleep for 3 days, which was truly insane in my opinion. But the point is, the first person who came to visit me was him. He apologized, saying he didn't mean to push me into a relationship so hard that I felt I had to kill myself to avoid it, which was complete nonsense, and I should have told him, but I didn't. I don't know, but I asked her to send me the additional story, and this was the resolution. Of course, everyone was surprised when I got to school. The person shocked the most was her. She stared at me for the whole first period, till even my boyfriend saw her. But I haven't told him what happened. I guess I was just scared that she might try something again. Honestly, I still am. I don't know what I'll do. The swimmer. A little girl thought she found a ghost in our camp, but it was worse. So my family owns a camp, and over the holidays, it got really packed for some reason. But luckily for them, I could come help because it was holiday for our college too. I helped around everywhere, acting in every job really, and I even helped as a lifeguard and a guide. It was around afternoon when a family arrived. They were a massive family with many members, but the one who caught my attention and everyone else's attention was their little 6-year-old daughter. She was the most energetic and adorable kid in the universe. She had ringlet short black hair and chubby cheeks. Sadly though, I wasn't to guide her family because I already had another group to look after. The family was guided down to one of the furthest spots up our lake because all the other spots were taken. Now this was a place people didn't go too much because animals disappeared there, and so there was clearly some kind of predator. But the guy leading them was really good at his job, so I trusted him. So no one thought there would be trouble. But then they returned earlier than expected. When I got there, I saw the little girl was crying. They were trying to comfort her, but she wouldn't stop sobbing. She said that when she was in the lake, a ghost touched her leg. It was clear to everyone that she was probably surprised by a fish or something, and sure enough, after she had our special pizza and pineapple recipe, she was laughing. As we were cleaning up for the night, I overheard that one of the guides was going back to the spot to pick up something the family left there. Now, I was already in the mood of getting a quick swim myself, so I told them to leave it and that I'd get it. I grew up in the forest, so I wasn't scared, even as I walked through it in that dark night. The wild animals were making their beds, and the trees bristled as I removed my clothes. I decided I was going to go skinny dipping, and that's what I did. After bundling my clothes, I hid them under a rock and jumped into the lake. It was as cold as you'd expect, but I grew used to it. I swam lazily heading up the lake with backstrokes. But then, as my head popped up the right for air, I spotted it. Only a split second, but I definitely saw it. It was a white man standing behind the trees. Not white as in a racist way, but white as in not peach or pink. White. White as snow. He was standing so still, I could have sworn he was a statue. And the sight made me jerk. I didn't show my shock though. Instead, I slowed down my swimming further and kept glancing over to be sure. And I was sure. He was standing there, and he was looking at me, looking as if he wasn't wearing a thing. I didn't know what he was doing or what he was waiting for, but I knew I was getting too far from my clothes. Deciding to pretend like I don't see him, I slowly got up and started swimming back in the direction of my clothes. And that's when he moved, running towards my clothes. He knew I knew he was there. I dropped the farce and swam faster, moving as fast as I could. But he was running on land, and so he was faster, heading towards my clothes. I stopped swimming and started running. Only then did I manage to outrun him, but not by much. By the time I was putting on my shirt, he was already behind me. His hand lifted high and he swung at me. My left foot slipped and there was a hot feeling on my arm. My blood and my skin and meat was peeled off like a piece of clothing. I screamed, running away from there as quickly as I could, and I heard his footsteps drawing nearer to me. I turned to look back, and only then did I get a proper look at his psychotic eyes, those ribs protruding, and seeing between his legs. He was very happy to see me. I ran faster, screaming until I saw the camp. My grandfather ran out and met me, asking what was happening and why I was naked. And then he saw my arm and looked up the hill. The guy was finally caught a few weeks later, and it was satisfying to know. But at that time I was already gone from the camp. Story 3. The Waiver. A creep tried to make me eat coals at the lake. This story is more of a creepy story than a scary story. So I went to camp with my school, right? And we were close to the lake. My friends were swimming, but since I couldn't swim, I was sitting by the lake and watching. Then, a friend bumped my shoulder and pointed me to the forest, saying those looked like eyes. I turned, and there in the bush, there was a butterfly that looked like two plain hazel eyes. I laughed and agreed. As they were swimming, I remembered the eyes again and decided to get a closer look. The closer I looked, the more I realized how much they looked like actual eyes in the bush. It was so real that I waved at them, but there was no response. That gave me enough courage to push the bush open, and there was the face of a boy. I yelped and jumped back. It was loud enough that people looked over, and a guy pushed me aside and took the guy who was hiding from behind the bush. As he was dragging the guy away, the new guy looked at me and told me to not speak to him. Later at dinner, I found out that apparently that guy had some kind of mental disorder, and he was brought here by his brother to help him clear his mind. Honestly, I don't think it was working. As I was walking next to the lake once, I noticed there was a fire there, and the guy with the eyes was there. He spotted me and smiled his creepy grin. I turned to leave, but he called me and asked if I wanted some. I didn't know what he was talking about, since there was nothing on the fire. Then, he did something completely unthinkable. He stuck his hand in the fire and pulled out the coals, and then held out his hand to me, saying, much like a child, "Here." This is probably the most disgusting thing that you will hear, but when I smelled his burning hand, my stomach kinda growled. It smelled like... Listen, I'm not the weird one here, and honestly, anybody could have felt the same way. The composition of human muscle is very similar to any other animal on earth, and the hand, with all its fat, is the part that's most similar to pork. So it's scientifically proven that the guy's hand smelled like bacon. Again, his brother was angry at me for it.